Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and I've been doing a daily countdown of my 366 favorite video games of all time. Coming in at number 12 is Final Fantasy VII. As I've mentioned several times over the whole course of the year, there are a lot of Final Fantasy games on my rankings, and I sure love them all. This still isn't the highest ranked one, but what makes this Final Fantasy game so different than the others is that I first played it way after its release. I mean, don't get me wrong, obviously I played like the first however many after the release, because, you know, I wasn't alive, but of like modern, or at least relatively more modern ones, where it would have made sense for me to play it right away, I did not yet with this one. Don't get me wrong, I knew all about the story of the game well before I played it. I'd read discussions, wikis, watched videos, and even the feature-length film Advent Children, which has ups and downs, but also some really terrific moments, and is a very cool, like, epilogue or sequel, however you want to phrase that, to the story here. Despite already understanding more or less how it connected to the plot of the original game, I played Crisis Core, the prequel, before I played the actual game. In fact, it's funny, I watched Advent Children, then played Crisis Core, and then way later played the game. I did this in so the wrong order. In fact, it took me 20 years to actually play Final Fantasy VII, not actually doing it until sometime in 2017. That's all to tell you that this ranking is rooted in almost no nostalgia at all, and it's actually the last game of the year that I played for the first time after I graduated from high school. I'm going to be spoiling a ton of story stuff here, but this is also one of the most prolific, spoiled games of all time, so I guess if you already don't know what's going on, maybe just go play the game. Super worth it. It shows some age, but yeah, do it. Regardless, I won't be talking about every event in the game, and there's a lot of them. It's a very long game, but I'm going to focus on the early stuff so people less familiar can try to follow along a little better, and then cover the broad strokes for the rest of the game. Here we go. The game hits the ground running. You are playing as Cloud Strife, the game's main protagonist, as he is on some kind of covert mission. In an unexpected turn of events, which is very cool, and was definitely edgy for the time, you're working for an eco-terrorist organization called Avalanche. Your goal is to blow up this huge building, which is called a Mako reactor. Large parts of the game take place in a massive city called Midgar. While there is a mayor and actual local government, most of the city is really run through the Shinra Electric Power Company, who provides the massive energy needs for everything in the city to operate. However, in order to do this, they harvest energy from the planet and then convert it into Mako. There's just one little tiny problem here. That energy from the planet, it's not exactly renewable. And I don't even mean like burning fossil fuels. The energy is called the life stream, and it's literally the energy of the planet itself and also every living thing on it. Shinra is killing the planet they're on and the people in life, and Avalanche aims to stop them. Of course, the public doesn't really understand this and thinks that they're just blowing up power plants to terrorize the city and ruin their lives. But if we're being honest, for most people, their lives are already pretty ruined. Midgar is split into 8 sectors, and each sector has 2 layers. On the top, people live in relative comfort and lead lives that wouldn't even be too out of place in a modern city in the 90s. But they're also able to live that life because they're built on these giant plates, lifting the city into the air, protecting them from the wilderness and other outside dangers, while also keeping pollutants and other side effects from the Mako reactors trapped beneath them in the slums. The slums are these awful, run-down parts of the city. In fact, from before it was truly Midgar, like a whole city, and it was like little villages or whatever, but like how the city of Troy had been destroyed and rebuilt on the remains of previous civilizations. And that's the reality that Avalanche lives every single day. Their headquarters are in the slums, and if choking on the toxic air with no sky to speak of, as the only thing you see above you is a massive plate, doesn't radicalize a person, I don't know what will. To make things even harder, Avalanche's leader has a lot of responsibilities. His name is Barrett, and he's the coolest character in this game. He's this big, muscly, strong dude with a heart of gold, which is already a great start, but get this, he's got a machine gun instead of his right hand. At the end of his arm, attached to it like a prosthetic, and his arms are big, meaty, beefy sticks, is a gigantic gun. How cool is that? But the best part about Barrett isn't any of that. He's a single father taking care of his little girl, Marlene. She's his world, and though Barrett may make some questionable decisions at times, everything he ever does is to make the world a better place for his daughter. Complicating things, he doesn't fully trust Cloud right away, and with very good reason. Cloud is a former member of Soldier, Shinra's elite private military operatives. He was even first class, the highest rank attainable before he defected. To make Soldier, members also need to be infused with Mako, which enhances their abilities, making them faster and stronger than normal humans. Of course, all of this makes Cloud an extremely competent and valuable help to Avalanche, but he's really there for the money, at least at first, and Barrett is absolutely right to be doubtful of his full allegiance. And when Cloud asks for more money, when, they're gonna go blow up a second reactor, Barrett is worried he can't pay him, because it would mean exhausting his daughter's school tuition savings. Save the world? Go to school? It's a tough balance for him. And that's just one thing. Barrett has stuff like this throughout much of the game where he is making difficult decisions on behalf of everybody so that people can get the best outcome for each person. He's terrific. He's really the leader of the whole group, and he's awesome. Thankfully for everyone, one of the other members of Avalanche is a woman named Tifa Lockhart. She was Cloud's childhood friend, and there's a lot of importance on those early memories throughout the story. She convinces him to stay on for less money than he was looking for. There's a lot of troubles that happen in trying to blow up the second reactor, and in the end, you're thwarted by the president of the Shinra company himself. Most of the gang gets away, but Cloud falls back down from the reactor and into the slums below. Now, this is a pretty big drop, and most people probably would have died. His fall is broken by a church, and then flowers, of all things, because that, does so much. I guess combined with his soldier training and genetic modifications, he can survive quite a lot. He's found by the most important character to this game's story, Aerith Gainsborough. She's a flower merchant in the slums, but she's really so much more than that. She's a remarkably kind person in a characteristically unkind world, and she has a lot more connection to Cloud's life than either yet realize. But for now, what we need to know is that there's people looking to kidnap her. Oh, and she wastes no time hitting on Cloud. Like, damn lady, you met a guy for 20 seconds, and you're trying to bribe him with a date. I know you're super important to the survival of the world itself, but let's calm down here. All joking aside, the men that are after Aerith are called the Turks, and they work for Shinra, basically doing whatever dirty work they need. And right now, that dirty work is kidnapping Aerith. You see, she's really important, and they'll stop at nothing to get to her. I love this section of the game, running around with her through the slums, seeing the daily lives of these people and the harsh reality of their world is striking, and there's a lot to love about what you're getting up to. You learn about how the public views Avalanche. Despite all of their efforts to help them, everyone views them as this, obviously terrorist organization. They are, but this terrorist organization that is hurting them rather than trying to save them. Talking to everyone is great, and some terrific world building in a genre where I often find talking to everyone is pretty much just a way to search blindly for clues about what to do next, but ultimately doesn't serve much more purpose than that. But getting Aerith home, her mom is glad you've protected her, but Aerith insists on going with you again because she's basically just a very good person and can't say no to helping people in need. No wonder Shinra wants to kidnap her. Can't have decent human beings running around when you're a monopolistic company extorting people's lives for money. Crazy how this game with themes and messages from over 25 years ago has stayed so topical. Ooh, but anyways, you eventually make it to this playground, which isn't all that important, but it's a great set piece in Crisis Core, which, remember, I played first, so I do like seeing it here. But while there, you talk to Aerith some more and learn that she used to have a boyfriend in Soldier, first class, just like you, and you remind her of him a lot. We later learned this was Zack Fair, Cloud's friend and mentor, but we'll touch back on that in a bit, because this conversation is interrupted by seeing Tifa in a dress being carted off somewhere by some unscrupulous-looking people. Cloud explains that Tifa is his oldest friend, and they have to go save her, and Aerith is all for it. You head on over to the funniest part of this game. Final Fantasy VII is a game that has, at least relative to the majority of the franchise, pretty serious world designs and a pretty serious narrative, pretty serious dialogue, and also, at times, totally random moments, some of the greatest comedy ever in a video game. Maybe it's just accentuated by how serious everything else is, but whatever the cause, it works. So Tifa's been sold into basically prostitution, but it's actually all a front so she can get close to this guy that has ties to Shinra and interrogate him. His name is Don Corneo, and he's a total creep. He's got money to burn and runs this whole section of the slum basically by himself. He's been looking for a wife and pretty much interviews women every night, and by interviews, I mean picks one from a lineup and then imposes his will. The dude sucks and deserves everything that happens to him, but that's not what's funny. What's hilarious is that in order to get inside this mansion, Cloud has to dress in drag, and apparently he makes one of the prettiest girls any of these dudes have ever seen. You do a bunch of running around here, getting a dress and a wig and perfume, get it all together, and Cloud is just stunning. So you get into the mansion and you're put with Tifa as one of the three girls, but Tifa doesn't even recognize Cloud in the whole getup, which is just hilarious to Aerith. But then when Don Corneo picks Aerith as the not so lucky girl for the night, Cloud and Tifa beat up all the guards, who by the way totally wanted to smash Cloud until they learned he's a man, and interrupt the festivities. The whole dialogue segment of Cloud saying he'll cut it off, and then Aerith saying she'll rip it off, and then Tifa saying she'll just smash it into mush is hilarious, and the idea of sweet, sweet Aerith being so brutal is definitely funny to me. Unfortunately, you're lured into a trap and get dropped into the sewers, but you've learned something very important first. Shinra, in an attempt to crush Avalanche, intends to, well, crush Avalanche. They're going to release the plate above them, absolutely demolishing that entire section of the slums, killing everyone who lives there. It's beyond evil. So you fight through the sewers and get out of there. I figured now's as good a time as any to talk about combat. Final Fantasy VII uses a fairly traditional active time battle system that the franchise had been using for a while, and continues to use after. Each character, enemies included, though theirs is hidden, has a little meter that fills over time. Once it's full, that character can take an action, and for your people, you select something from a menu. There's attacks, spells, items, and you could do some other tactical stuff, like defending, otherwise skipping your action. The actions available to you are sometimes dependent on the character, but it's largely based on your equipment. The equipment in this game is generally straightforward. You have a weapon, you have an accessory. That's it. But where it becomes interesting is materia. The life stream can be refined into spheres called materia, which grant powers. It can be magic, like pure or fire. It can be summons, like Odin and Ramu. It can be special actions, like steel. But the most important thing is that in addition to getting these powers off the bat, they also modify your stats, allowing you to build characters in whichever direction you want. But the materia also levels up, granting more skills and abilities as it does. What's so great about this system is that it is the materia leveling up, so you're not dedicating to one particular character, allowing you more room to experiment with different loadouts and options without feeling like you've wasted your time if it doesn't work out. This could feel like the characters don't really have a defined structure themselves, and I'll generally agree there, but there's some influence from base stats and things. However, there's one more thing that makes everyone unique. Every time a party member is attacked or takes an action, they have a second meter that fills a little, and this enables limit breaks. These are special abilities, often attacks, but not always, that a character can use that's specific to them, and they're often very powerful. One of the nice things about limit breaks is that this meter charges pretty quickly, so you can count on having access to this fairly often while just running around fighting stuff, but several times during longer boss fights. I really like the combat and materia system of Final Fantasy VII, and while it's not quite my favorite they've done, it's up there, and set up a lot of things I like in some of the future titles. Back to the story, we head back towards the Avalanche base to warn everyone about what's going to happen, and discover they're already fighting their way up to the plate to try to stop this. Aerith splits off to go make sure that Marlene is going to be safe, while Cloud and Tifa try to stop the bomb that's going to take out the support pillar for the plate. Oh, and they do rejoin Barrett, which is cool, and I forgot to mention the most dastardly part about the Shinra plot. They're framing Avalanche for it too. Wow. What jerks. Not only do you fail to stop the bomb, but the Turks succeeded in capturing Aerith as well. Everything is going just terribly, but not all hope is lost quite yet. Cloud guides the trio over to Aerith's house, not only to rest and regroup, but also to tell her mom what happened, and hey, Marlene's there too, she's safe. It's here we finally learn Aerith's true nature and the reason that Shinra has been looking for her. Obviously, Shinra does everything through Mako, which is harvested from the lifestream. Aerith is actually adopted and is extremely powerful because she's the last living ancient. The Ancients are a race of people who were born with a deep spiritual connection to the lifestream, able to communicate with it and hear what happens regarding the world essentially interacting with the lifestream. For example, sometime after Aerith has been adopted, she told her adoptive mother that someone close to her had died and rejoined the lifestream, only for her mom to then later get a letter in the mail that her husband had died in the war against Wutai. Shinra wants Aerith because they want to perform experiments with her, essentially, in order to better understand how to extract the lifestream from the planet, potentially revealing the way to an untapped, enormous well of the stuff, which would, of course, if they do that, doom everything. But also because of how it relates to another experiment that they had been performing for years. This is where the story starts getting a bit more complicated, so bear with me here. 2,000 years ago, a meteor fell from the sky and it contained an alien life form. It began attacking the Ancients and wiping them out, but thankfully was captured and imprisoned. Not long before the start of the game, Shinra found this tomb where it was imprisoned and thought it was an Ancient itself, naming it Genova, and started harvesting its cells to implant into people, which wound up creating superhuman fighters that generally wound up joining Soldier. This was done to Cloud, this was done to Zack. But importantly, one of the first to be experimented on went on to become the top-ranking Soldier member, Sephiroth. All of this creates a ton of problems, and there's more complications as well, but for now, we break into Shinra headquarters, rescue Aerith, and also pick up another Shinra experiment, which is a talking wolf of sorts, though not quite. Their name is Red the 13th, and they're awesome, and I love them. Good boy. It's some fantasy animal that generally lives hundreds of years and is not a dog, but damn, that's a dog. We bust out of Shinra and leave Midgar behind. As much as I like all of the Midgar stuff, the world is much bigger than the one city, and in journeying through it all, we see how Shinra's actions have been hurting the entirety of the planet, with entire civilizations dealing with problems like drought, famine, and pestilence. But it's not all bad. There's lots of things to love about the world. Cosmo Canyon, for example, is super cool. Love Cosmo Canyon. And there's a rich history to everything that Shinra seems to want people to forget. Speaking of forgetting stuff, Cloud did a whole lot of that. This is where I'm going to blitz through the rest of the story, so here we go. The group heads to Cloud and Tifa's hometown, Nibelheim, a small mountain town that had been devastated by Sephiroth years ago. While there, Cloud has flashbacks and remembers all sorts of things regarding Sephiroth, searching through records from Shinra beneath some mansion there. This is where he learned about the Genova project, and he went insane, starting a murderous rampage and burning down the whole town. Crazy stuff. Cloud remembers fighting to stop Sephiroth, but that's only partially true. Cloud did fight Sephiroth, but he was only a part of it. I'm doing this a bit out of order, but the important thing is that a lot of the fighting was done by Zack, and we learned that Cloud was not even a member of Soldier. He was just like an infantryman there, though the experimenting and stuff did happen to him. Many of his memories are actually Zack's memories, and when Zack was killed by Sephiroth and rejoined the livestream due to their shared connection of the experiments done on them, part of him became Cloud. This revelation is actually late in the game, but before we get to that, we have to deal with Sephiroth and Genova a bit. Genova's reawakening has called another meteor to the planet, and this time, it could wipe out everything. In order to stop it, the party must guide Aerith to the Temple of the Ancients so she can get to its most sacred place and pray to the planet, warning it of this meteor so it can defend itself. The planet is very alive and has, it's aware of things. Things are tough and time is in short supply. But just when you think you've made it through the weeds, Sephiroth appears and kills Aerith in one of the most shocking twists in any game ever made. After fighting him off for now, Cloud carries Aerith's corpse into the lake where she can rejoin the livestream as the last Ancient. Thankfully, the prayer was heard by the planet, and things are set into motion. We struggle against Sephiroth a whole lot more throughout the game. There's a lot of struggling against Sephiroth, while still being hunted down by Shinra. Cloud has his whole identity crisis. We finally defeat Shinra, kill Sephiroth, well, kind of, I guess go watch Advent Children, manage to cast Holy, saving the planet from the meteor by using the livestream as a shield, and then the game shows that 500 years later, the technology that had been a cancer on the planet has been eliminated and the world is healed. Like I said, blitzing through the rest of the story. But I want to go back to Aerith's death for a moment here. I obviously went into it knowing it was going to happen, but at the time, it was such a huge deal because in every other game in the franchise, it would have made total sense for Sephiroth to appear, to attack Aerith, and for another member of the party, probably Barret, with his protective, paternal instincts, to sacrifice himself for the rest of the party, Aerith included, to get away. But no, and the death is so sudden. Of course, Aerith's death is the game's legacy, but the game is a lot more than just one girl dying. Final Fantasy VII told a deeper and more character-driven story than any other game in the franchise at that point, even more intricate than Final Fantasy VI. Is it a little too complex at times? Maybe. Did some parts get rushed? Yeah. And that's why we have the remakes now to flesh out those parts. I'm looking forward to playing them. I haven't done it yet. I'm basically waiting for all 3 parts to be out and then to just do it all is like a, I don't know, probably 400-hour experience, whatever stupid number it'll wind up being. But the whole identity crisis with Cloud, combined with how it relates to Sephiroth with dark thoughts and influences pulling at our protagonist throughout the game, struggling to find what parts of him are him and what's Zack or Jenova, or later on even Sephiroth, is fascinating and takes what on the surface seems like a pretty straightforward sword for hire sort of character into one of the most interesting characters in an entire franchise full of interesting characters. And the intangibles of Final Fantasy VII are some of the best ever made. While the graphics obviously show their age, they were going for a very specific style, and I think they nailed it with the dark fantasy sci-fi blend, and each character is memorable and fully their own. Midgar is a character all its own as well, and that shows in not only the art, but also the music. Nobuo Uematsu is legendary for his scores, and 7 isn't my absolute favorite of his, we'll get there, but it's definitely some of his best work, and it's such a shame that he couldn't do his original plan of having it all be orchestral in this game because of how it affected file sizes and load times on the PlayStation, because I think of his later orchestral arrangements, like the Distant Worlds concert series, Final Fantasy VII adapts better than everything else, and it's not actually very close. And, you know, One Winged Angel is like the greatest battle theme ever made. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 11th favorite game, where I die in the opening cutscene.